Yo, welcome to Sig Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Sig Slayer, chilling with Mark, the honorable villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? I still can't believe it. We got both brothers with us here today.
Mind boggled. Joining us today, we have two legendary cartoonists, the great Gilbert Hernandez and the great Jaime Hernandez. That's right, the Hernandez brothers are joining us today. Can't believe it. But before we chop it up with the bros, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right, main event time right here. Let me scoot up to the mic. Our next guests are pioneers of imagination. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you the creators of Love and Rockets, the Hernandez brothers. Gilbert, Jaime, how are you guys doing?
Good, man.
Man, this is such a treat. We're gonna just dive right on in. We got some great questions for you too. Since it's your first time joining us, we always like to start with you guys' comic book origin story. But since you guys are are self-made men in this industry, I'm going to twist the question a little bit, because I would normally ask how you got your first gig in pro comics. But instead, we would like to know, how did you learn how to make comics? And these questions are for the both of you. You guys decide who want to go first.
Okay. We just always drew since we were kids, you know. I came fourth in line in a family of six, and you know, I just did what my older brothers did. You know, they drew, so I drew. You know, I didn't know why. I just wanted to do it. You know, so and it was something that we stuck to, especially me and Gilbert.
Just to add to it, yeah, it was just that we just drew since we were kids, because my mother and father had a little bit of art talent. But it was mostly because we just loved comic books and movies, and we just wanted to approximate what we saw. We just loved comic books and some movies as a kid. So we just tried to copy what was in there. Basically copying comics through the storytelling, you know, and same with movies. You know, we like funny movies, Abbott Costello or whatever. And we just learned how to, you know, look at humor and cartoons, Bugs Bunny cartoons, just put that, but wanting some of that in our drawings. So we did that from the beginning. And so we ended up, you know, so many years later with Love and Rockets, already interested in making comics.
Now, what about the storytelling mechanism? What about the growing pains of that, of making a linear story, beginning, middle, and end? There had to have been some growing pains, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, for me, Gilbert already knew how to tell a story. Me, I was still learning. Even when we did the first issue of our comic, I was still learning how to start something and wrap it up at the end. But it was just from looking at comics our whole life that it just seemed like kind of a natural thing, you know, to do. It just took me longer.
Well, it was watching those television shows like The Twilight Zone and even The Flintstones, is because you learn story arcs. They're only a half hour long. They introduce what it's about. Something goes wrong in the middle, and it gets resolved at the end. Or in The Twilight Zone, it's either it gets resolved or it gets ruined, whichever you know, episode it is. So anyway, after you see enough of that stuff, you start to learn, okay, I got to have an ending. And that was the hardest part, figuring out endings, unless you had an ending at the beginning. Sometimes you start a story and then you have the ending, but you have to fill in the middle, and it has to be worth the reader's time. So that, yeah, it was a struggle. We learned over the years. It wasn't immediate. If there's an illusion that we knew what we were doing in the first issues, it was just that, an illusion. We're just making it up. We're going for it.
So just trial and error and pure desire. Wow. Mm-hmm. That is fascinating. So we're going to follow up with, can either one of you explain the significance of your relationship with Fantagraphics?
Oh, simply that we published our first comics, because we had comics laying around, and we got them published, you know, in a fanzine. It was just a fanzine. That's where we thought we were going to be for a while, you know. But I just got this feeling I would send a copy to Gary Groth at Fantagraphics, because they had the Comics Journal, and it was very controversial, very combative. So we thought, well, if we can take their punishment, we'll take anything. We just didn't have money for ads or anything. So we thought a review would help, good or bad. So I sent it to him and forgot about it. And about a week later, he wrote me back, says, we'd like to publish this. And it just kicked off simply that way. And so basically at first, it was a little rough at first because nobody knew what they were doing. But Gary and Kim, our co-publisher, they looked at it and saw potential of like, well, let's just do this. Let's just do it. Nobody knew where it was going. But once it got going to what we wanted to do, they fell in line. There's a little resistance, but they fell in line. And now it's been so long, we just do the book and hand it in, and then they publish it, and it's all fine. So as far as we know,
it's all love and rockets.
So can you guys talk about your time in the punk scene and making concert flyers back in the day? I know Ismail was the bassist for Dr. No, so you guys had to do some of them for free, right?
Almost all of them for free. Yeah, Gilbert and I, in our little scene in Oxnard, we were the ones who could draw, so they would always come to us, and say, can you do us a flyer? And we were like, okay, this is kind of like the same thing as breaking into comics. Like, okay, I will do this, and then maybe it'll turn into something. But, after a while, I was like, oh, I'm not getting paid for this or anything like that. But yeah, it was just friends of ours, in our little scene that kind of that just you make flyers. Oh, these guys can draw.
Oh, guys, I have to ask. Before we move on from the punk scene, looking at the pictures when you guys were young, it's funny how the styles, they don't go away. Because I closed my eyes and it was like, I had homies that went to high school that was dressed just like you guys, like the same gear, the same pants, the hairstyle, the whole thing. So it was like that scene, whether the music changes or not, but that look is like immortal in LA, man.
Only so many clothes you can wear, so
right.
As well wear cool ones, It's I always called it Atom Age 1950s clothes, whereas the dressed up punk, not the scruffy or the mohawk stuff, but just dressed not like a hippie, I guess. In those days, we're talking about those days, the 70s. So yeah, you dress differently just to disassociate with that. I don't know. I never thought about it other than because I never wore colorful clothes, attention-getting clothes. I just didn't. I just wasn't that. But everybody else I knew did, and I just had the proper haircut and straight leg pants and stuff. And people look at that like, so what's so weird about that? When we were in our, in the late 70s, it meant something to dress differently.
Sticking back to around that time, that era, when you guys were youngsters early on making comics, right? You got, there's 3 brothers and reduced down to 2. But was there a healthy competition? You guys were boys that grew up to men. So was this competition of like who had the better looking page or, just amongst the house, in the house?
Well, for me, it was, I always grew up going, I'm the 4th guy. So the guy before me can draw better. The guy before that can draw better. The other guy. So I was always in my own place. And it's not like I wanted to compete, but I just wanted to be involved, And, so it was never anything like starting a fight or anything like that, because I just wanted to be included, because my older brothers knew what they were doing, and I didn't. So I kind of just go, oh boy, I better catch up, kind of more like that for me. Right.
Yeah, well, for me, it was simply that Jaime was, right off the bat, in Love and Rockets, Jaime was the star, just because of his storytelling and drawing skills, immediately. And his subject was new and interesting, the Maggie and Hopi stories. So I had to look at that going, well, I'm not going to do that, so because I had similar things planned in the past. I thought, that's not going to, it doesn't need to be done anymore. It's being done right, So I just had this empty space to do what I wanted. So Jaime getting the notice and selling the book at first, and getting the good reviews and fan response, I was happy. I felt, I was in the back, but I felt happy that I could do what I wanted to because the book was already there, and the other half had to be filled, with me and Mario. So I just came up with Palomar, and it was basically the competition is mental more that I have to keep up, like he was saying, like Jaime was saying, he had to keep up with what he thought he had to do, and I had to keep up because I saw what I had to do. So I was free. I just didn't want to hear that, like, no, mine is good and yours is terrible. I just didn't want to hear that. So I come up with something that, like, so they wouldn't say I was terrible. That who knows if you can control that. But I just needed to have something substantial, and that's what Palomar came out of.
Love and Rockets, throughout its publication, is filled with representation from cultures, many cultures, different communities. But the LA in me has to ask this question. The Cholo culture that's represented in Love and Rockets, the biggest gang in the nation is Cholos, right? And so I wanted to ask, was Love and Rockets the first time Cholo culture was represented in comic book pages?
As humans.
As humans?
Yeah, as humans. Go ahead, Jaime.
Well, I think what he's saying is because it was always done wrong. If it was on a TV show, they were always like, vicious murderers. But I knew plenty of Cholos who just wanted to cruise on Sunday night. They didn't want no trouble. Well, especially me. But they try to make it. It's kind of like how they treated punks in early television, of like. They carry a switchblade and stuff like that. And I go, I don't know one punk rocker who carries a switchblade, And so when he said make them human, that's basically what it was. We took everything we could, or that interested us in our culture, and we put a different spin on it, like a positive spin. Like, these are my neighbors. These are not a organized group that are trying to, overthrow me or anything like that. I knew plenty of guys who were trouble, but overall it was just, we were just hanging out and getting drunk, stuff like that. So, and I liked that part, and I liked writing about it. And also because this was when Love and Rockets came out, it was the early 80s. So most people in the country didn't know about this Southern California. They didn't know this lifestyle and stuff like that. And I almost took advantage of that, like, oh, you don't know people who dress like this. You don't know people who live like this. And stuff like that. So it was kind of like just taking advantage of things we were not seeing in other art cultures, other like movies or TV or comic books, especially,
So when you said that, it made me think of Friday. I'm like, wow, you were doing Friday like 20 years before.
Sometimes not as funny though.
So guys, along with representation, the characters in Love and Rockets experience real-world problems like aging over a 40-year span. What inspired this method of storytelling?
And for me, it was simply that it meant that it was a true epic. I wanted Palomar to be an epic for myself, my own thing, and I wanted it to last for how long it did. But I wanted it to be an epic, and that the characters start out young and then they end up older, And now I'm still doing some of the characters outside of Palomar, and they are getting older. That just seemed more honest, a little more connective to the readers, because the readers are going to get older when they read our comics. People, it's a part of reality. I understand what the problem with the mainstream is. Spider-Man can't age or Superman can't age because they got to sell toys. or movies and cartoons and video games and that stuff. Fine, no, that's fine. That's their business. But we were free from that, so we could just do it. It really is to connect to the readers. Like everybody has old folks in their lives that leave us, and we're never the same when they leave. When they die, and this is something that was about humanity to me.
Issue number 1 of Love and Rock is in the Smithsonian, which gotta be a huge honor for you guys. Love and Rockets is known as the great American comic book by many. Reflecting back on both of your careers, how would you guys like to be remembered? And it's a 2-part question. Would you guys like to be remembered as legendary Chicano cartoonist or legendary American cartoonist? In other words, does it matter who's telling the story these days, or is it important just to tell the story?
It's important to tell the story, I don't know, Beto, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the story and the connection to the readers. That's the main thing. So if we're Americans, if we're Chicano, if we're outsiders, whatever you want to call us, we're just telling the story from our heart and what we believe is worth putting on the page, And that's stories about people. And yeah, there's crazy stuff going on. There's all kinds of exaggerated surrealism and that kind of stuff. But the basis of it is the connection to for us, for me, and I think Jaime too, the readers connect to the characters and stick with them because they like to see where they're going. And so it's not a lure. It's just more, that's what storytelling is. You want to keep there. You want to keep going with this thing. But I consider a world cartoonist. We're speaking to the world, whoever gets it, basically. It's not just a niche or a small group of people we're trying to be. I mean, I don't know how vast our readership is, but I know it's around the world, and that pleases me.
For those that don't know, can you guys tell us your comic book influences?
Ooh, well, let's see.
It's a lot.
We grew up at the birth age of Marvel Comics, so we got into that. But in those days, we read all kinds of comics. Mario would bring home Archie comics as well, Richie Rich comics and stuff like that. So we had a broad view of comics before the comics world got smaller and smaller. I mean, the of what was acceptable, So I don't know. I found out that over the years of reading the same old comics that my brother collected, that I would go back to going like, oh, this is my favorite issue. I like this character. I like these characters, how they do this. I like this stuff. And so I was mostly drawn to character-driven comics. And so that would be my biggest influence, I guess, is that, like a Betty and Veronica comic meant more to me than something else, I don't know. It was just the human aspect of it got me more interested the older I got, and I'm thinking that's why Love and Rockets turned out the way it did. It's character driven, and it's hopefully characters that you like and characters that aren't necessarily strong. Got a lot of weak characters, but that's the strength of their character, kind of the they got no power in this world, kind of thing. Yeah, but it was comics that like Dennis the Menace comic or something that kind of drove me closer. And I'm thinking maybe because Archie and Dennis the Menace comics didn't have superpowers or something, they were kind of just kids from our neighborhood. Even if Archie wasn't really our neighborhood, but it was just the characters hanging out walking the streets, of their neighborhood. Whether that was realistic or not, it just was. I related to the part of like, oh, this is like me walking down the street, stuff like that. Anyway.
Gilbert, what about you? Is there a particular creator that you were inspired by, or was it the same where it was like theme driven?
It was. I'll talk about artists. Yeah, there was Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. Like Jaime said, we were there at the birth of Marvel, like Fantastic Four #1, literally, and then we saw it grow, and so we were influenced by that. But like he said, it was the early '60s, so there was a resurgence, a real electrical energy for pop culture, and it wasn't just it was comics, TV, movies, music. Duh. There was an explosion in the '60s. So I have arguments with people about what are the greatest days. Well, we're not saying it's the greatest days, but we were there when things were starting, and things have remained. Marvel's still the biggest comic book company, and they were very small. They were just very small when they started out. Jack Kirby, Ditko, and Stan Lee, and a few other guys. But anyway, I learned to like, because it's Jack Kirby, who I completely love, and Ditko. I love those guys. Basically, I think what I'm saying is we were drawn to certain artists and the way the stories were told because of the certain artists. So if you go to an Archie Comics and you look at a handful of Archie Comics, you can pick out 3 artists who were really good storytellers. And we gravitated toward that. You go to, like I'm going to say, Dennis Menace Comics. There's 3 artists on that. And 2 of them are really super superlative, and 1 was really good. So we gravitated to those types. That's why I don't have a lot of crazy memories about Marvel after Kirby and Ditko and DC had to keep up with Marvel, so they just started becoming the same company. So that I lost interest in that. I was just more into character-driven stuff. And so when the Undergrounds came out in the late '60s, I was very influenced by that. I was too young. I was way too young. I looked at it going, I'm gonna die. I'm going to hell looking at this. But then you'd see the work of Gilbert Shelton and Robert Crumb, and you go, this is the good stuff. This is interesting stuff. Even though I still was scared and read Spider-Man. But then later on, when we were punk and wanted to make our own comics like Crumbs and Gilbert Shelton, so they were still good. And I didn't want to go back to the old comics, except for those spotty ones that we liked, the artists. And to this day, we look at all those old cartoonists, and they still inspire us because they were good storytellers, but they were ignored from the serious comic book fan because it wasn't superheroes. It wasn't Romita Sr. It wasn't the way they told stories.
We know that in Oxnard, wrestling was a big phenomenon. So, and Jaime's work is riddled with wrestling. Can you guys give us a Mount Rushmore of your favorite wrestlers?
Ooh, let's see. I'll start with one. Freddie Blassie, because he wasn't classy Freddie Blassie yet. He was still wrestling, and he lit the Olympic Auditorium on fire. Him and someone like Roddy Piper did it after him. I mean, Piper's big break was L.A., and he knew how to light that arena up. And let's see, that's 2. Who else do we got? Bobo Brazil was a big fave when we were kids. Let me think. Who else?
You got one more.
Money.
What'd you say, Gilbert?
Ric Flair.
Of course, right? No Ric Flair in yours?
Yeah. I forgot. The older we got.
The Nature Boy.
our TV would get Atlanta TV. So we would watch WCW before. It was NWA then. But when Flair was before WWE, when Flair was lighting up the arena, Dusty
That's
Rhodes,
awesome. Dusty Rhodes. Yes. The American Dream. Yes, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
What about you, Gilbert? So one of yours is One of yours is Ric Flair, right?
Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper. God, I'm trying to go back to the past. Bobo Brazil, what Jaime said. I know there's a couple of Latino guys that were hot in the 60s. Pedro Morales, who's from the East Coast, and then Luis Hernandez, who was from Mexico. And they were friends, but they always had to wrestle they had to wrestle for the money. But they're scientific wrestlers, so they're not as goofy as some of the guys. Of the women, of course, the fabulous Moolah. You know, a couple. Names escape me right now,
but you named a bunch, man. You guys are wrestling buffs, dude. You guys rattled off names like bam, bam, bam. Okay, so I got to ask this question, guys, because both you guys are cartoonists, been in the game for 40 plus years. Have either one of you changed any way you guys produce your work? For example, have any one of you guys migrated to any form of digital equipment?
Not digital equipment. I still just do it, on a piece of paper, draw and ink on a piece of paper, then I scan it, But no, I still do it old school way, because it kind of doesn't need to be fixed, kind of thing. I still like to do it because it's very personal. It's all me, my hand, my brain, But I guess in the only way things have changed really is how I get the comic done. I take certain shortcuts now. I learned shortcuts that'll help me get it out quicker, even if it doesn't come out that quick. But yeah, it's mostly that. It's just mostly for me the change is how do I get this thing out faster without suffering the art, keep the quality going. But if I could find a way to make it quicker, that'll be it. But no, I've never gone to the computer, other than scanning.
What about you, Gilbert?
No, I just I finish it on my own, all as crappy and gunky as it is, and I scan it, send it, and then they clean it up, before it's sent off. And that's pretty much as technical as I get. and
even the words on the art.
Everything is all hand. Everything is done by hand. There's no way we're going to do it any other way, because that's how it's done.
Wow.
Comics are done by hand. that's what
right.
It is for me. It's a pain in the ass. I can see the advantages of lettering and whiting out and all that stuff for the computer. Well, I can see that. And blowing up images that are too small and shrinking them and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I hear guys do that all the time. People do that all the time. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But that's not how I do. I go home and mess up. I have to cut up things, paste it on. And not that often anymore, because we've been at it so long. I pretty much know what's going on the page. Just inking it down and then fixing it.
All right, next question. What genre would you guys describe Love and Rockets as? Today it would be called indie, but that's too broad of a statement. So what do you guys?
God, I don't know. Just
world comics. Comics.
Yeah. I don't know what category to put us in.
This is interesting because back in the day, the underground comics, guys were being interviewed, and Gilbert Shelton was Robert Crumb's peer. He just says, we didn't think of them. I think this is Gilbert Shelton. I hope I'm not. Anyway, he just said, we didn't think of them as underground comics. We just thought these were comics. Like, the newspaper has comics. They're comic books. Because they grew up in the 50s. So it was like there was just a bunch of comic books. It wasn't just Marvel, DC, and that kind of thing. So anyway, they never thought of it as underground. They just went with the title the way we do, indie comics or graphic novels or just those tags that people get what they're looking for, and that's why we use those things. But these are just comics. We grew up in the mainstream totally, and then this is how it came out for us. And so it's just comics to us. This is comic books, but I don't know what names you give it to convince people to look at it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I have to ask this question. about Love and Rockets and YouTube. Which character from Love and Rockets is most like you?
Ooh, well, for me, it's my main character, Maggie, who's a woman. I'm not a woman, but she was who I put most of my thoughts into, you know. And then I created Ray, who I wanted to create a male character so I could do things, see things from a kind of different perspective, or life in a different perspective. Well, I thought for many years, I thought Maggie and Ray were me. And then I realized every time I did an issue, their decisions were not mine. You know, they didn't do what I would do, kind of. I mean, it sounds silly, but they had a mind of their own. And I kind of liked that. But then I would think in my head, like, well, then who's me? I mean, all of it is me, obviously. But yeah, they're not even me anymore.
That's a crazy paradox right there, man.
Yeah, and yet I do still relate to them, and I write them blindfolded. I mean, I just can write them. Excuse me. Like they are me, but their decisions don't go my way sometimes, you know, and that's kind of cool, you know. They're their own characters, so we're arguing a lot, you know. When and like I want this to happen in the comic, and the characters go, well, I wouldn't do it like that.
Hey, Gilbert, what about you?
You know what? They're all me. I mean, yeah, for a while there was Luba, for a while there was Heraclio, for a while there it was Tonantzin, for a while, that was the early days. Then it became, so now I don't have that kind of focus on a character, one character anymore. So they're all me and they're none of me. Just what Jaime is saying. They'll make, we create humans. They always say, oh, you guys write women characters. No, we write humans, because once you start getting into, or at least a male like myself, if I start writing a woman character, things can go wrong. It'd be political, it'd be too political, or I could just misjudge things, misread things if I'm going for a woman, because, you know, not a woman. So I go for humans. My people are humans, so that way they can be good people with a lot of mistakes, a lot of difficult parts to them. So that way it makes it more real. But as far as a character that represents me, no, they're all my kids. I can't pick one.
All right, this question's for you, Jaime. We found out that you worked with Alan Moore on Tom Terrific's Tales, and so we want to know the collaborative process for working with Alan Moore.
Oh, well, I had heard through his editor or whatever that I was that he would like to work with me, and I had known Alan. I mean, not really know him that personally, but we ran into each other a couple of times, and you know, I obviously knew who he was, what he was famous for, and all that. And when he asked me, when I got to the point where I was kind of getting old and like, oh, you're not going to make me draw that, are you? You know, kind of like that. And he called me and we had a good conversation, you know. And then I remember I go, okay, Alan, for this story, you know what I like to draw. You know what I was trying to cut to the chase. Like, don't write me something where a giant spaceship or a giant monster with 10 million different parts, you know. You know, don't, you know, I don't want to draw something like that or whatever. And I remember, I think he got fed up with me. He goes, all right. He goes, I know you like to draw the girls, you like to draw the blah, 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 blah. And I was like, is he mad? Is he mad at me? But, and that's why he wrote the Tesla story. And the funny thing about that, but it was a 4-page story with no words, or very few words. I remember going, oh, a silent one, cool. I got his script, man. And that guy gave me like 20 pages of instruction. like each page was like each panel was like a totally like a page long of explanation. And I remember going, I'm not going to be able to do this, but I go, no, I said I would, I'm going to do this. And as I was transferring the information to the page, I go, oh, this does work. I had just never drawn that way. I've never worked that way. And I was going, wow, every artist who ever worked with him deals with this. They know how to work in this manner. This is normal for them. And here I am drawing my own little comics with my own little rules and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, you poor guys, you guys work hard, man. So that was kind of eye-opening. And then I did a short couple of pages for Evan Dorkin, and he did it the same way. His scripts were his descriptions were super long and super involved and detailed. And I remember going like, oh God, his poor artists. It was like, wow, I didn't know you guys worked like this. But so that was kind of a learning experience, and I haven't done it since.
You had something to say, Gilbert?
Oh, it was just a little footnote to that. It's funny, I worked with Darwin Cook in his last comics, Twilight Children. Anyway, and he's his own artist, right? And he was prickly, which is a good sign. Don't mess with my art, don't mess with what I'm doing, and we worked together. So we worked it out, and I understood him right away. I thought, okay, he's an artist, he writes his own stuff. He doesn't need me, but we're hooked up to this story and we're going to work it out. And he even said, I go, how detailed do you want me to describe things? He goes, not at all. Just go, if a guy's running downstairs, just say, running downstairs, and that's the whole page. And I'm like, perfect. He knew what to do. But whereas Alan Moore, like Jaime said, he would describe every footstep, every little crease on the guy's pants, every little thing, which is fine. People love that stuff. Great. But I knew working with Darwin that wasn't going to work. So I put in as much as I could without getting in his way. A couple of times we had a couple of blocks, but he told the story because he was an animator. He told the story wonderfully. He made some weird choices because I don't think he got what I was writing, but overall it was terrific, and it was a beautiful book and this and that. But anyway, there's people who work differently, and if you're going to work with them, you got to know ahead of time how much of them are they going to put in it. Some people like I said, the direction, and some people don't like the direction. So, yeah.
I think also working with artists is different than working with writers. Because Darwin was an artist. He had a different quality than someone writing on a keyboard.
Right.
And Love and Rockets is coming up on 100 issues, counting each volume. What does it mean for the both of you to hit that milestone?
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I think it's cool, but I still got things to say, Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's
Are you guys gonna have an anniversary issue? If you count all of them, it's coming up on 100 issues. Do you guys think you're gonna have an anniversary issue or something?
Now you're talking about collections, the collected books.
If you count all the volumes together.
All the volumes. Yeah. Oh, I never even thought of that. Yeah. 100 of comics though in 40 years. That's not that impressive.
And especially two guys sharing the load.
Everything happens for a reason. So if it took 40 years to get this 100 issue out, you guys got issue number 1 in the Smithsonian, my guys.
Yeah, that's wild.
Somebody must have snuck it in. Just pull it out of their shirt and just, Oh, that's funny.
So we'll go on to the last question. Is there something that we haven't discussed that you guys want the fans to know about?
Any announcements, any signings, any appearances, anything you guys want fans to know about?
Just recently, Comic-Con is coming up, in San Diego. We'll be there shortly, but we'll be there. Other than that, no. I just got back from Spain, so I ain't going nowhere for a while. It was 2 weeks straight of daily interviews. It was pretty amazing, but great. The fans in Spain. It's great to go to Europe because you meet people that you just didn't know really like your work. So they really love rockets, and that made me really happy because they were very enthusiastic and very open about it. So anyway, and I've been working like crazy, so I'm not going anywhere for the time being, for a little while anyway.
So Stats fam, you can see both the Hernandez brothers at San Diego Comic-Con?
Yeah, I'll be there one day. You'll be there longer, right?
Yeah, 2 days, I think. Thursday and Friday, I'll be there.
All right. Well, Gilbert, Jaime, thank you guys for joining us. This was a treat. This was an honor. You guys always have a home here on the Sig Slayers station, so thank you guys once again.
All right. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Sig Slayers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and the Hernandez brothers. We are out. Peace!
Sig Slayers.